GIRDER.com. So again, welcome to Training Tuesday. This presentation is intended for training purposes only. The things that you see within this presentation, like technical specifications, you can see those at DaytonSuperior.com. We have things like tech data sheets, safety data sheets, all kinds of resources out there. So if there's anything that you're interested in, or if you want to expand on this after this month is over with, because we're going to keep on going next week with internal bridge deck and then understanding our resources for bridge deck, then just contact Chuck and myself at training@DaytonSuperior.com. All right, so who is Dayton Superior? We are the leading provider of engineered solutions for the concrete industry, and we specialize in accessories, chemicals, forming, engineering, and obviously training. So not only do we do the accessories, but within that accessory line, we handle tilt-up, precast, you name it. We handle Simon's forming and shoring, a very adaptable and strong system that saves labor costs. If any of these things interest you, we are this one umbrella with all the things underneath. Contact us and we'll help you understand everything that we have available. So let's get to our exterior bridge deck. Like I said, with us today is Chuck Hoke. He's been in the construction industry for over 49 years, with 20 of those as a dealer for accessories, forming, and chemical products. 29 of those years have been with Dayton Superior, and Chuck has worked as a product manager among many other things, and is currently now our national training manager. His business and civil engineering degree helps contribute to his role as Dayton Superior subject matter expert in many, if not all, topics and products. He's sitting here right beside me, all humble, because he hates listening to this, but I'm going to finish with, currently, he shares his knowledge through me. Everything that he knows and does, he likes to train other people. I'm sure there's some of you on the call, some internals for Dayton Superior and Simon's. We all know Chuck, and we appreciate him taking the time to help us understand. Today, we're going to understand and learn about exterior bridge decks. Go ahead, Chuck.
Thank you, Heidi. So, okay, as Heidi alluded, I spent my first 20 years as a distributor dealer for Dayton Superior and Simon's Corporation and some other dealers. And our mantra at that time was, if it had four walls on it, we didn't call on it. We did primarily just bridge and highway, so that's where I started my experience from, getting a feel for how bridges work and how the forming aspect of bridges are done. So with that, let's start looking at plans. Yeah. One thing about plans, there are a slew of pages in a set of plans. Don't let that throw you, because we only typically, if there's a single bridge, there's typically only 3 or 4 pages that we actually need to actually do a bridge estimate and also overhang bracket takeoff. So one of the typical pages that we will need will be the section view of the deck, obviously. The section view of the deck gives you basically, if you're standing at the end of the bridge deck looking right straight through it, and it basically shows you all of the rebar, the positioning of the steel beams or concrete girders, depending on what you have for your construction method. It'll also show you your parapet and your deck configuration as far as the rebar locations in the deck. Then one of the other key drawings that we're going to need is the framing plan. And the framing plan basically is going to tell us how long the bridge is, and it's going to give us the spacing between the girders. You can also get this information from the section view, but the length of the girder is typically only found on this page. And one of the key components here is it is a steel beam, a steel girder. A steel girder can sometimes be very complicated. You can have a multitude of different sizes in the top beam flange. because that is going to be your tension zone. A lot of times in the tension zones or over the piers, et cetera, they will build the plates up, especially if it's the build-up girder. They will sometimes have multiple plates. So you could have 4 or 5 different flange sizes just over the piers, usually within a steel girder. Now, concrete girders are totally different. They're usually it's just the one hanger, and usually it's already cast in place. So here we get the overall length of the bridge. The overall girder details are right there. And you can see on this one here, a lot of times too, when you look at these plans, it's often a good thing to look at a bigger set of plans or get yourself a really good magnifying glass. With the section view, you're going to get the girder spacing. Now, this was also available on that framing plan view that we had, but here it's already spelled out for us. We have our deck thickness also spelled out on the deck on here. Now, all of these figures that I'm showing you right now are all items that we typically need to calculate the one, the spacing of the overhang bracket, and 2, the bar supports that are going to be required. And we talked about bar supports last week. So here we got the deck thickness over the beam. Here we have the overall width of the bridge from out to out, what typically is from outside of fascia to outside of fascia. And the fascia is often referred to as the overhang. So let's talk about overhang brackets. Now, overhang brackets typically, when we design the brackets, is because in today's market, a lot of bridge jobs are going with either SIP decking on the interior bays or a concrete slab. We're seeing this more and more. Actually, the concrete slab is becoming more and more prevalent, as I found 4 more states that actually started going to it. The SIP decking was put in place here because it cuts labor costs or labor install costs down considerably for the contractor, so therefore the state gets a credit back on the job. But you see, overhang brackets are still a requirement on almost every bridge job. So with that, we're going to look at, we do need to have the section view of the plans, the beam geometry, because we have to know what the size of the girder is, how deep the web is, etc. We'll also need to have the screed information. Now, the screed information is extremely important, and the only person that can actually give that back to you is the contractor. The contractor comes in and will need to give you the spacing, because every screed machine is a little bit different. Also, what type of hanger you preferred. A lot of times they'll tell us what hanger do we recommend, and we can actually make a recommendation based off of the strength requirements we needed for this job. And then obviously we like to talk to the contractor about what size spacing he's looking for. Is he looking for 3 foot, 4 foot, 2 foot, etc.? Usually you will not see anything come out of our office greater than 4 foot, primarily because standard dimensional lumber, number 2 2x material or 4x4 material, typically has a deflection more than 1/4 of an inch when you start spacing at 4 foot centers. So that we basically, to avoid that deflection within the deck because of the lumber giving way or sagging, we basically keep everything at 4 foot or less. So we can do a typical view for a section view. This is what we're looking at. We're going to actually put our hangers in place here with a standard overhang bracket, form it up. And what we will do is put out the recommended forming, whether 2x6 nail plate with 2x4s or 4x4s on the edge, and then your bulkhead plate here, and then your bracing with the guardrail. Now, the one key component here is hangers. And hangers here typically are a crapshoot, basically. You have about 20 different sizes and flavors and what they can do, whether it's a 90, 45, 45, 45, a weld-on, a precast hanger. All of these hangers here are basically unique to almost every job. Now, there are some standard hangers that we typically have in-house sitting on the shelf, and they would typically be like our C24 for APR and a C24 AS, which is a weld-on hanger. Other than that, we would actually be, you'll end up having to have to have our boys in MTO pricing, Jerry Cruz and Tim Johnson, give you
I think Tim's on the phone.
Well, that's
good job,
great.
Tim. Yeah.
They will actually be working up numbers for us. Once we get the estimate worked up, we will get an estimate. Those guys will work up the numbers for everybody and get y'all a good quality number for your job. Different types of hangers, obviously, basically have different applications. Here we have a C60 Type 1A press steel hanger. Typically, this is a good hanger for when you do not have a finishing machine riding on the overhang bracket, but the finishing machine is actually set up on top of, over the top of the girder. So all the weight from that finishing machine is sitting on top of that girder, not on the overhang bracket. Like I said before, SIP decking. You're seeing this is most states here, probably 40 some odd states in the U.S. typically still use this product. Can be used both in precast girder and steel girder. Its attached problem with this material is if you're in the northern half of the country, a lot of the states have actually finally started to realize that, well, this material here collects moisture that travels through the deck and will sit in the pans. But unfortunately, in the northern half of the country, we use a sodium chloride material or similar to like a salt or a calcium chloride that would actually then migrate through the bridge deck, through the concrete, sit in this SIP pan, and then the bottom of the concrete deck would actually sit in that liquid. And what happens is that the deck starts to get eaten from, the concrete gets eaten from the bottom side.
So I'm going to stop you for a second. We do have a question. Usually don't do this, but it pertains to, do the hangers need to be epoxy coated if the bar is epoxy coated?
No. Hangers typically do not. A lot of times they will be galvanized to stop rust. And a lot of times they can be galvanized. I usually don't recognize half hangers as being galvanized because of the hazards of welding galvanized metal.
Gotcha. Thanks, Chuck.
So here's our half hangers that we talked about here. This last couple of inches of this hanger, as you can see here, is where you would attach the weld. A lot of times what we would recommend if the contractor wanted a galvanized hanger is that he galvanized just the tip of it after what would be close to the edge of the concrete. But typically this material is all going to be embedded in the concrete deck itself. So, and usually your top of steel deck, your steel beams are typically not galvanized anyways. They are usually a plain steel. Sometimes they can be a non-rusting steel, etc. So they can actually accommodate different coatings on this after the fact. We can also do a tie-back hanger if we cannot weld to the girder for whatever reason. A lot of times if you're in tension zones on the tops of the girders, you cannot weld to that tension zone. So what we would do is use a half hanger here. I recommend the C68. I'm not a big fan of a C60 hanger or a C60 Type 4A with a D1 LA bolt, anchor bolt, as sometimes the bolt can turn as you tighten everything down. So with that, I would recommend just the standard, and these would be MTOs, made to order, and they would be selected for every job here. Now the overhang bracket. The overhang bracket is our standard C49 bracket. It is developed here in about 1980, in the early 80s, 82, 83. And this bracket here has a 54-inch horizontal member, has a 3,750-pound load capacity. That's if you have the diagonal or the vertical leg at 14 inches or more. Once you start opening it up past this, and once you open it up past 70 inches, because we can actually make these brackets MTO as a specialty product, it would be an MTO, but the loading capacity drops considerably because of the bending stresses in the pipe. So, but the standard bracket typically is 30 to 50 inches. That'll cover probably 60% of the beams out there. The deep bracket, which is just a little bit deeper, a vertical adjustment, so you've got a little bit longer pipes on the vertical leg and on the diagonal leg to help accommodate that. Those are 50 to 70 inches. And then we have the C49S, the shorty, as they refer to it. Typically that is a bracket that we've taken the inside pipe out of the C49 on the vertical leg. So you remove one pipe, which is the inside pipe, take the outside pipe, connect it to the hole where the vertical pipe was attached, that one piece you removed, and then you can adjust the diagonal up and down, up to 14 inches, down to 26 inches. And here this just shows you the two pieces of pipe that we're showing in here. As you see with the vertical leg, and if you adjust the vertical leg, you've got to adjust the diagonal leg too. As we said, the shorty bracket, typically you remove that vertical inside leg, so you only have one pipe, you're sending those bolts through there where the intersection pieces are. And this actually can go to kick down to about 14 inches to 28 inches. Excuse me. Always recommend that the bracket have a couple of inches of push down area, because you will get some settlement in the bracket once you start loading the capacity on. You will get roughly some deflection in the C49 anyways from when you first start loading concrete on it. You will typically have somewhere in the neighborhood of right around 3/4 of it, 1/2 inch to 3/4 of an inch of deflection in the overhaul bracket. The overhang bracket, the C49 and the C49S, any of those brackets, including the deep bracket, are fully adjustable, and they can basically be trimmed and built out so that you can accommodate any type of construction needs or what you have available to do the job. We also have a junior bracket. This bracket is basically about half size of the C49, but it does come with a 3,750-pound load rating. This bracket here typically is real good for instances where you have built new bridge going in right next to a building on a job, or your new bridge is going right in next to your old bridge, and you don't quite have enough room to actually accommodate. We also have our C51 wall plate adapter for any time when you have a concrete, solid concrete box beam or whatever to attach to. A lot of times you'll see guys use their overhang brackets as scaffold brackets. Well, they actually attach put an insert into the concrete and then attach these plates, or use the plate with a post-installed anchor and use it as a scaffold bracket. The one thing you have to make sure that you do is you have to double check your scaffold bracket or overhang bracket as needed. Let me go back here. This area right in here needs to be tightened every day because what walking on it is like a vibratory load and it will cause that bolt to loosen up. Obviously, we have guardrail receptacles that actually attach to the overhang bracket. You can also attach it to a walkway extender, the C54 walkway extender. The walkway extender gives you 20 inches of adjustability of additional walkway space. And I'm going to emphasize walkway. It is not designed for loading of concrete. It's only designed to carry a live load.
So I can't put a bunch of cinder blocks on it?
You can put some cinder blocks on it, but you don't want to pour concrete on it.
Ah, okay.
We also have available our C52P guardrail speed bracket. This is basically a guardrail attachment, goes right to your overhang bracket, similar to the C52. Only this one here has an aluminum pipe that actually attaches right to that receptacle, guardrail receptacle, 2x2 aluminum, and that also has all of the stirrups on it, so you can just hang your 2x4s in there for your safety rails. And it also has a inverted attachment for your bottom toe rail. We also have the heavy duty overhang bracket, the C89, the C89 now. Much bigger, much heavier to use. Typically, have a minimal application. One thing is when you go to use these brackets, you need a crane to set it, and you have to have all 3/4 inch hardware to attach everything. The finishing machine. This is the problem about spacing of the overhang brackets. Overhang brackets typically carry 3,750 pounds on their diagonal. The weight of the finishing machine in today's marketplace can be anywhere from 2,400 up to 2,500 pounds easily. The machines have gotten so much bigger, so much heavier over the last 15 years, 18 years, that now you're seeing a lot of overhang bridge brackets jobs being kicked down to 3-foot and 2-foot spacing because of the weight of the finishing machine. That additional weight can come in play, and a lot of that has to do with depending on what the options are that the contractor has on the finishing machine. So the finishing machines typically have requirements. They have wheels. Typically, they're going to be spaced at 3-foot or 4-foot on center. Here you can see two different bogies here going down through. 4 wheels in the place, so you've got a 4-wheel leg here. Let's say you have a finishing machine here that weighs 6,000 pounds. You have roughly 1,500 pounds per wheel load on this load. Is the way it's spaced out. So at any given point, you're going to have 1,500, and depending on how far your brackets are apart from each other, you may end up carrying even more. So with all that being said, we actually have a master form that we actually send out that we would require to get sent in, where we can provide engineering services for a bridge job. This bridge job here comes in, and we have a full line of product, a description on it here, basically what type of hanger, et cetera, what type of bracket, what the weight is of the finishing machine. The contractor will fill this out with the help of the dealer, get it back to our engineering department, and I think the fee is right now somewhere in about 150 to right around 150 or so dollars for the spacing calculation. We will provide the engineered calculation, which will actually give you a recommendation for the spacing of the overhang bracket. Now that information will be down here in the lower corner of the bridge of this form, but this upper full area here would be in place for how to set the overhang bracket up before you send it out. Or how you take it, basically assemble it on the approach slab before you carry it out onto the bridge deck. That's what this little box in this area here in the middle of the left-hand page is. We can also provide a drawing in place here, and each drawing is based off every job considerations. We draw up as close as what we can to the project as is needed, what the bracket is they're going to be using, the hanger they're going to be using. So every job that requires this will actually get a job specifically drawn just for their project. Now, one thing, once the concrete is completely placed here, typically you're going to have a textured surface. Head needs to be achieved. So typically a lot of states are going with like an AstroTurf drag or a burlap drag. Some states use a flex tine rake system, which actually puts little grooves in the top of the deck. But whatever they use, they typically have to apply a curing. A lot of times curing can be put in the form of a chemical curing compound, or you can use a curing cover. A curing cover such as burlap or polyethylene. A lot of times you'll see guys use a burlap coating and then they'll put soaker hoses on it and then polyethylene over the top of it. With that said, all of this information is available on Dayton Superior's website. All the information on overhang brackets, I recommend if you've got a bridge project you're looking for, get a hold of the Bridge Deck Handbook. It is a great piece of information. There's a lot of forming information in the front of it. The back side of it, there's a lot of estimating plans as far as how far to space your bracket based off of screed load and how much concrete you actually have on the overhang. We also have a wide array of tech data sheets, obviously the handbooks. You have the marketing, e-marketing pages available. We also have product pages available. One of the great things that and they're working on updating all that right now is we got a new contact and sales customer service list coming out. So you'll find it easier to locate who and where your customer service group is and who your salesperson is if you don't already know. We also have technical and engineering training and obviously training from Heidi and myself. All that information, if you need to get a hold of us, feel free to contact us.
Absolutely,
with that, I'm going to say thank you very much, and you have a great day. Any questions, please feel free to enter them in the chat box. We'll stay on here for a little bit. Yeah. If not, we'll have this posted here this afternoon.
Sounds good. Any questions, guys? Go ahead and put that in chat like Chuck said. We could chat with Chuck. I just made that up. We got a great question earlier. Okay, well, like Chuck said, we record that. Well, hey, they're back to you. Yeah, do you have a question? I hope you guys are finding this fun. Okay, go ahead with your question. While he's typing that out, these are recorded and they're put out on YouTube as well as DaytonSuperior.com. Just search for Training Tuesday. You could find the link to sign up for the next series. We're going to be talking about interior bridge decks next week, like I said when I started. Yeah. Do you ever offer in-person classes, like more hands-on?
Yes, we do. We do have a class that we can come in to offer. Usually, I'll come in with if you have an overhang bracket, or I'll bring one in to have one sent in to us, so we can actually go how they're adjusted, how they're cleaned, how they're repaired. We have all those classes available. If you're interested, please feel free to get a hold of us at training@DaytonSuperior.com.
Yep, right there on your screen. You can check it out.
And we will be able to get you set up with what class you're looking for. Typically, they run everything from half a day to a couple hours.
Yeah, good question. And yeah, just a segue, these Training Tuesdays are, we made it a series, but you don't have to take all of them. It does help if you have all of them to kind of put it into one big piece. But if there's anything that you want to have more customized or longer, we do need to teach on the safety aspects of our projects, for our products. Please contact Chuck and myself, and we'll get something set up for you. And do so at training@DaytonSuperior.com. So with that, if there's no other questions, I think that's it. Thank you, Chuck, and I appreciate all of you guys on the phone. And I will see you next week.
Thank you, Heidi. You have a great day.
Yeah, bye now.